Thanks for joining me today. My name is Nick Johnston, and today we're going to be discussing the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, sometimes called the Boxing Day tsunami, which stands as the deadliest tsunami of all time. There were many factors that contributed to this being the deadliest tsunami ever: time of day, lack of a warning system, lack of public education regarding tsunamis and understanding the warning signs, the location the tsunami occurred, and the fact that many of the areas affected were low income with little to no building standards. And the single biggest factor, the fact that this tsunami was unprecedented in its size and scope. But we will also discuss the positives. The fact that this tsunami triggered one of the largest humanitarian responses of all time, led by the U.S. Navy. Operation Unified Assistance was not only a huge success, saving countless lives and improving global perception of the United States in general, but it has also become the global standard for humanitarian responses to disasters, with many other countries modeling the U.S. operation. And in the wake of the staggering loss of life, the 2004 tsunami also brought about a wave of reforms related to tsunami warnings and how we detect, track, warn, and educate communities to the risks they pose. Here is a look at today's agenda. First, we will review how tsunamis form. We will discuss earthquakes and how different faults create different tsunamis. We will cover a timeline of the 2004 disaster, look at photos and videos of the destruction, which, fair warning, is pretty brutal. We will discuss Operation Unified Assistance, and we will investigate the changes that have been made to the global tsunami warning system today, and finish with procedures in the event of a tsunami. Okay, for those of you who like numbers, here are the staggering stats. On December 26, 2004, at 3:58 a.m. Eastern Time, 7:58 a.m. local Indonesian time, what was initially reported as a 9.1 magnitude earthquake, more recent studies have adjusted that estimate to be a 9.3 megathrust undersea earthquake occurred. Located 100 miles west of the coast of northern Sumatra, an island of Indonesia. It was the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in Asia, the most powerful earthquake of the 21st century, and generally considered to be in the top 5 strongest earthquakes of all time. It was the longest fault rupture ever observed, at between 746 and 808 miles long. It was the longest duration of faulting ever occurred, at 10 plus minutes. It generated tsunami waves over 100 feet high in some locations and caused flooding up to 3 miles inland. It was by far the deadliest tsunami of all time, with more than 200,000 people dead across 14 countries, and it caused more than $14 billion in economic losses. Now let's talk about different ways in which tsunamis can form. There are 4 basic methods: earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, and the weather. Now, while all 4 of these are capable of producing deadly tsunamis, they are all very different, with some being more common and some being far more dangerous than others. Let's review from least dangerous to most dangerous, starting with the least: meteotsunamis, or those produced by the weather. Meteotsunamis form when a sudden atmospheric disturbance transfers energy to a body of water. This energy propagates large waves through either the ocean or large lakes, sometimes capable of significant damage along coastlines. The speed and intensity of the meteotsunami depend on how well the atmospheric disturbance matches the natural frequency of the body of water it affects. If the atmospheric conditions and the water's natural oscillation align, wave heights increase significantly through resonance, amplifying the energy transferred to the water. Here's how it works. Atmospheric pressure changes. Sudden changes in atmospheric pressure generate meteotsunamis. These changes come from fast-moving weather systems such as thunderstorms, squalls, or frontal passages. The air pressure disturbance creates a direct force on the water's surface. Energy transfer to the water. Whether it's low pressure, lifting water, or high pressure pushing down, the disturbance initiates a horizontal movement of water. If the pressure change occurs over a wide area, this movement is sustained and grows into a wave. Strong winds accompanying these systems can further enhance the transfer of energy to the water, amplifying the wave size. Resonance and amplification. A key aspect of meteotsunami formation is resonance. If the speed of the atmospheric disturbance matches the natural frequency of wave oscillation in the body of water, a phenomenon known as Proudman resonance, the wave's amplitude increases significantly, forming larger waves. This is especially likely in semi-enclosed basins or coastal areas where the waves reflect off the shoreline and further intensify. Wave propagation. Once formed, the wave behaves like all tsunamis, traveling across the ocean or lake. As it approaches the shallower waters near the coast, the wave grows in height due to the decreasing depth of the sea floor. Even though meteotsunamis are associated with storms, the wave can arrive in clear weather hundreds of miles from its point of origin and catch people by surprise. Here is a recent example of a meteotsunami. June 13th in 2013, northeastern United States. Tsunami waves crashed upon the New Jersey and southern Massachusetts coasts, despite clear skies and calm weather. In Barnegat Inlet, New Jersey, 3 people were injured when a 6-foot, 1.8-meter wave swept them off a jetty and into the water. Scientists determined that the waves had been generated by a derecho, a high-speed windstorm associated with a strong band of thunderstorms that had passed through the area hours earlier. A photo of that derecho is seen here as it passed over a sailboat. Pacific Tsunami Warning Center scientists used their tsunami forecast model, RIFT, to simulate how this weather-generated tsunami, or meteotsunami, propagated off the east coast of the United States in the North Atlantic on June 13, 2013. A derecho traveled eastward across the U.S.'s mid-Atlantic states and out over the ocean as an atmospheric pressure anomaly. It appears in the animation as a prominent negative wave, or trough in the sea's surface. It generates a meteotsunami wave as it moves, and when it reaches the edge of the continental shelf, seen here as a change from light blue to darker blue colors in the ocean, the waves jump or spike in amplitude and reflect landward from the shelf's edge due to the rapid change in depth. The waves then became trapped in the shallower water of the continental shelf and oscillate back and forth for hours. Some wave energy also escapes to the deeper water where they travel much faster and with longer wavelengths. Now let's talk about landslide tsunamis. In general, tsunamis are caused by mass displacement. With landslide-generated tsunamis, that happens when a large mass of ice or earth dislodges, either above or below the surface, and displaces a large quantity of water, generating a wave. Near their source, landslide-generated tsunamis may be larger than tsunamis generated by earthquakes, and can affect nearby coasts within minutes, with little to no warning. These tsunamis usually, however, lose their energy quickly and rarely affect distant coasts hundreds or thousands of miles away. Here's a recent example. A landslide above the toe of the South Sawyer Glacier fell into the waters of Tracy Arm, South Juneau, Alaska, producing a tsunami on Sunday, August 10, 2025, at 5:26 a.m. Alaska Daylight Time. The tsunami did create significant damage on the opposing shoreline, with a run-up between 470 and 500 meters. Thankfully, no one was on the opposite shore at the time of the tsunami, and nobody was hurt during this incident. Let's talk about volcanoes. There are several causes of the volcanic eruption-induced tsunami, such as an underwater eruption, a shock wave generated by the blast, a pyroclastic flow that enters the sea, or the collapse of an underwater caldera. Tsunamis generated by volcanoes, both above and below water, are infrequent and are generally considered a secondary concern to the volcano itself. Additionally, a volcano must be near the surface or not far below the sea surface to generate a significant tsunami. Like landslide-generated tsunamis, tsunamis generated by volcanic activity usually lose energy quickly and rarely affect distant coasts. It's pretty simple, really. The more ocean water that is displaced, the greater the potential size of the resulting tsunami. One of the largest examples of a volcano-generated tsunami includes August 27, 1883, Indonesia. The volcano Krakatoa exploded and collapsed, generating one of the largest and most destructive tsunamis ever recorded. Waves reaching 135 feet, or 41 meters, destroyed towns and villages along the coasts of Java and Sumatra, killing more than 34,000 people. Since the volcano was above the water and the explosion was violent, this was likely a shock wave-generated tsunami. But when it comes to mass displacement and displacing billions of gallons of water, nothing beats the destructive potential of earthquakes. The Earth's surface is made up of tectonic plates, which are large slabs of solid rock that fit together like puzzle pieces. These plates meet at plate boundaries that are shown on this map, and they are constantly in motion. Where the surfaces of these plates catch and lock along their boundary, stress builds up as the rest of the plate continues to move. This takes place over long periods of time. When the stress finally becomes too great, the plates suddenly slip past one another, either laterally or vertically, displacing huge amounts of mass and releasing tremendous amounts of energy, which causes the Earth to shake and crack. These cracks are called faults. Plate boundaries are made up of many faults, and this is where most earthquakes occur. Earthquakes generally occur on one of four different types of faults: normal, reverse, or thrust, which is a special type of reverse, and strike slip. Normal faults result from extension or plates pulling apart. Reverse and thrust faults result from compression or plates pushing together. And strike slip faults result from plates moving laterally or horizontally past one another. Tsunamis can be generated by earthquakes on all of these faults, but most tsunamis, and the largest and deadliest, result from earthquakes caused by thrust faults, which are capable of displacing the largest volume of mass. These tsunami-generating earthquakes originate in subduction zones, where tectonic plates collide and one is forced under the other. What's known as a megathrust fault occurs when two tectonic plates collide over a large area or a very long fault zone. When one of the plates is composed of oceanic lithosphere, it dives beneath the other plate, called the overriding plate, and sinks into the Earth's mantle as a slab. The contact between the colliding plates over many miles is the megathrust fault, where the rock of the overriding plate is displaced upward relative to the rock of the descending slab. Friction along the megathrust fault can lock the plates together, and the subduction forces then build up strain in the two plates. A megathrust earthquake takes place when the fault ruptures, allowing the plates to abruptly move past each other to release the accumulated potential energy. This thrust can happen along hundreds of miles, displacing an incredible amount of ocean water and thus resulting in the largest and most damaging tsunamis. When the 2004 megathrust earthquake occurred, not only did the fault occur along a distance of nearly 1,000 miles, but the fault surface slipped or ruptured about 50 feet upward along the subduction zone, displacing an estimated 7.2 cubic miles of water, which is roughly 8 trillion gallons. In fact, the raising of the seafloor was so large it significantly reduced the capacity of the Indian Ocean and produced, get this, a permanent rise in the global sea level by an estimated 0.1 millimeters or 0.004 inches. Let that sink in. Megathrust earthquakes are almost exclusive to tectonic subduction zones and are often associated with the Pacific and Indian Oceans. These subduction zones are also largely responsible for the volcanic activity associated with the Pacific Ring of Fire. In the Indian Ocean region, the Sunda megathrust is located where the Indo-Australian plate subducts under the Eurasian plate along a 3,400-mile fault off the coast of Myanmar, Sumatra, Java, and Bali, terminating off the northwestern coast of Australia. This subduction zone was responsible for the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and resulting tsunami. This animation shows the tsunami wave field in the Bay of Bengal for the duration of 1 hour after the earthquake. This animation shows a much wider view and illustrates why this south to north rupture is important for understanding the behavior of this tsunami and why such progressive ruptures need to be considered for future tsunami forecasting. If the earthquake had moved the fault along its entire length all at once, it would have sent the largest tsunami waves perpendicular to the fault, and so they would have passed south of Sri Lanka. The earthquake motion, however, started at the south end and moved northward along the fault. So the tsunami began radiating from near Sumatra before it could be generated near Myanmar, thus causing the largest tsunami waves to strike Sri Lanka and Somalia directly, consistent with the tsunami waves actually observed in those countries. This map shows approximate travel times, indicating how long it took the tsunami to reach various coasts. The closest coast was Indonesia, where indeed the greatest destruction was inflicted less than an hour after the initial earthquake. Here is a look at the death toll that resulted from the December 26, 2004 tsunami. By far the greatest death toll was incurred in Indonesia, where approximately 170,000 people lost their lives in a matter of minutes. That was followed by the island of Sri Lanka, with 31,000 dead, India, with more than 16,000 dead, and Thailand, with 5,500 dead. Along with the dead, countless were injured, and tens of thousands were reported missing and never found. Here now is an approximate timeline of the destruction. Beginning at 7:58 a.m. local time, when a 9.3 magnitude earthquake, one of the largest ever recorded, rips through an undersea fault in the Indian Ocean, propelling a massive column of water towards unsuspecting shores. The city of Banda Aceh, on the northern tip of Sumatra, Indonesia, was the closest to the powerful earthquake's epicenter, and the first waves arrived there in just about 20 minutes, around 8:15 a.m. Indonesian time. It's nearly impossible to imagine the more than 100-foot-high rolling mountain of water that engulfed the coastal city of 320,000 people, instantly killing more than 100,000 men, women, and children. Buildings folded like houses of cards, trees and cars were swept up in the oil-black rapids, and virtually no one caught in the onslaught survived. Thailand was next. With waves traveling 500 miles per hour across the Indian Ocean, the tsunami hit the coastal provinces of Phang Nga and Phuket an hour and a half later, around 9:30 a.m. Despite the lapse in time, locals and tourists were caught completely unaware of the imminent destruction due to the lack of warning system. Curious beachgoers even wandered out among the oddly receding waves, only to be chased down by a churning wall of water. The death toll in Thailand was nearly 5,400 people, including some 2,000 foreign tourists. About an hour later, on the opposite side of the Indian Ocean, the waves struck the southeastern coast of India, near the city of Chennai, pushing debris-choked water miles inland and killing more than 10,000 people, mostly women and children, since many of the men were out fishing at the time. Some of the worst devastation was reserved for the island nation of Sri Lanka, where more than 30,000 people were swept away by the waves at around 10:49 a.m. Among the destruction was a crowded passenger train that was swept off the tracks and flipped on its side. The 2004 Sri Lanka tsunami train wreck is the largest single rail disaster in world history by death toll, with over 1,000 fatalities from that train wreck alone. Around 11 a.m., the tsunami reaches the Maldives archipelago. Two-thirds of the capital, Male, is flooded, as well as most of the 1,192 islets. More than 100 people die. Finally, 7 hours after the initial megathrust earthquake, at around 3 p.m., the tsunami reaches the East African coast. Nearly 300 people die in Somalia, including around 100 fishermen. At least 10 die on the Tanzanian coast. In Kenya, however, where evacuation procedures have been put in place, there is only one casualty. Now I'm going to share some photos from the disaster. Fair warning, this is rough. You're going to see pain and destruction on a scale that is hard to fathom, and not everyone featured in these photos survived. If you want to skip ahead, you can look for slide number 43, and I apologize in advance for what will likely be many mispronunciations. As mentioned, the city of Banda Aceh on the northern tip of Sumatra was the closest to the powerful earthquake's epicenter, at just about 100 miles to the east, and the first waves arrived in under 20 minutes, around 8:15 a.m. This is the before and after photo of the destruction. Notice there's barely a single structure left standing. In the city of Banda Aceh, an Asanese woman clings to floating debris while being swept by the tsunami in the capital of Aceh province in northwest Indonesia. A man tried to rescue her, but both victims were swept by the current and died, as witnessed by the AP photographer Franz Delian. Seen here, the Rahmatullah Lampuk Mosque stands intact after the 2004 tsunami hit the area. It was the only structure not flattened by the rolling wave. A village near the coast of Sumatra lies in ruins. Helicopters assigned to Carrier Air Wing 2, CVW-2, and sailors from the USS Abraham Lincoln, CVN-72, are conducting humanitarian operations. What remains of the village of Lampisang is visible in the upper right corner. Destroyed houses are seen in this aerial view of the town of Mulabo in Aceh province, Indonesia. A local man, Jakfar, 41, looks at the destruction from the second floor of his house in Kyuda village in the provincial capital of Banda Aceh, Indonesia. More before and after photos from Banda Aceh, Indonesia. Seen here, an elephant, which belongs to the Forest Ministry, removes debris in Banda Aceh, Indonesia. Thailand was next, with waves arriving around 9:49 a.m. Seen here, curious beachgoers investigating the receding waves. In the foreground, a man stares as the tsunamis approach. In the background, swimmers are seen running for their lives. The death toll in Thailand was nearly 5,400 people, including 2,000 foreign tourists. This photo is of some of the strong waves that were crashing on the Patong beach in Phuket, Thailand. A boat passes by a damaged hotel at Tong Sai Bay on Phi Phi Island in Thailand. A street littered with damaged vehicles and debris after the area was hit at Patong Beach in Phuket, Thailand. This photo, taken outside a Buddhist temple where more than 1,000 bodies have been gathered near Takuapa, Thailand. An hour later, at around 10:30 a.m., on the opposite side of the Indian Ocean, the waves struck the southeastern coast of India near the city of Chennai. This image shows Marina Beach in Chennai, India, on December 26, 2004, as the tsunami hits the region. This photo from India shows people who lost family members to the deadly tsunami trying to identify them from photos taken before their mass burial and later posted on boards to help families identify their dead. Here, a woman seen weeping at one of the mass burial sites near Nagapattinam, India. Some of the worst devastation was reserved for the island nation of Sri Lanka, where more than 30,000 people were killed and hundreds of thousands left homeless. The tsunami arrived in Sri Lanka shortly before 11 a.m. This is an aerial shot taken from a helicopter which shows villagers searching for the missing along railroad tracks where a packed train swept off its tracks by the waves at Telwati, about 63 miles south of Colombo, Sri Lanka. The 2004 Sri Lankan tsunami train wreck still stands as the largest single rail disaster in world history by death toll, with over 1,000 fatalities. A closer view of one of the train cars surrounded by water and debris. Here, a young tsunami victim's father cries along with other family members as he holds his son's lifeless body at the hospital in Galle, Sri Lanka. If the ocean speaks to you, listen. The first warning sign of a possible tsunami is the earthquake itself. However, tsunamis can strike thousands of miles away from where the earthquake is felt only weakly or not at all. Also, in the minutes preceding a tsunami strike, the sea sometimes recedes temporarily from the coast, which was observed on the eastern earthquake rupture zone on coastlines such as Aceh, Phuket Island, and Khao Lak in Thailand. Penang Island in Malaysia, and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This rare sight reportedly induced people, especially children, to visit the coast to investigate and collect stranded fish on as much as 1.5 miles of exposed beach, with fatal results. However, not all tsunamis cause this disappearing sea effect. In some cases, there are no warning signs at all. The sea will just suddenly swell without retreating, surprising many people and giving them little to no time to flee. Both phenomena were observed during the 2004 tsunami. But sometimes legends save lives. One of the few coastal areas to evacuate ahead of the tsunami was on the Indonesian island of Simule, close to the epicenter. Island folklore recounted an earthquake and tsunami in 1907, and the islanders fled to inland hills after the initial shaking and before the tsunami struck. These tales and oral folklore from previous generations may have saved the inhabitants. On Mako Beach in North Phuket City, Thailand, a 10-year-old British tourist named Tilly Smith had studied tsunamis in geography at school and recognized the warning signs of the receding ocean and frothing bubbles. She and her parents warned others on the beach, which was evacuated safely. Additionally, John Croston, a biology teacher from Scotland, also recognized the signs at Kamala Bay, north of Phuket, taking a busload of vacationers and locals to safety on higher ground. Anthropologists had initially expected the Aboriginal population of the Andaman Islands to be badly affected by the tsunami, and even feared the already depopulated Onge tribe could have been wiped out completely. But many of the Aboriginal tribes self-evacuated and suffered few casualties. Oral traditions developed from previous earthquakes helped the Aboriginal tribes of Australia escape the tsunami. For example, the folklore of the Onges talked of huge shaking ground, followed by high wall of water. Almost all of the Onge people seemed to have survived the tsunami. Here's an example of the disappearing ocean effect. This photo shows the maximum recession of tsunami waters at Kata Noi Beach in Thailand at 10:25 a.m. prior to the third and strongest tsunami wave. Now, let's finally talk some good news. Within 48 hours of the disaster, the United States military sprang into action. Operation Unified Assistance began on December 28th and involved the Army, Air Force, and Navy. Money poured in. About $14 billion was raised internationally. The scale of the generous public response was unprecedented. not only in the amount of money raised, but also in the speed with which money was pledged or donated, and the proportion of funding that came directly from the general public. The U.S. military alone brought about $250 million in support. Let's talk about what the different branches of U.S. military brought to the recovery. First, U.S. Air Force. Airlift operations. C-5 and C-17 heavy cargo aircraft delivered millions of pounds of relief supplies, while C-130 tactical airlifters provided transportation within the affected areas. Personnel and command. Over 2,000 airmen from 100 Air Force units were involved, with Major General David A. Depchula serving as the Joint Force Air Component Commander, JFACC, for the relief effort. Maritime Patrol. P-3C Orion Maritime Patrol aircraft conducted critical search and rescue missions and surveyed the vast devastation. Logistics and coordination. Air Force personnel helped coordinate relief efforts and provided essential logistical support from bases like Utapao Naval Air Base in Thailand. The United States Army. The role of the U.S. Army included medical support. Army personnel provided crucial medical treatment to victims of the disaster, with the Army's Task Force 160 providing direct medical care to thousands of people. Logistical support. The Army's role in CSF 536 included providing essential logistics and transport to deliver aid to harder-to-reach devastated regions. Personnel deployment. A significant number of Army personnel were involved, with hundreds deployed to the affected areas in Thailand, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka, supporting the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, in delivering relief supplies and minimizing suffering. But the backbone of Operation Unified Assistance was the U.S. Navy. The Navy's sea-based platforms provided critical freshwater, conducted search and rescue, airlifted supplies, and delivered medical assistance, providing a significant soft power effect and establishing a template for future military-led disaster relief operations. Key Navy contributions included naval assets. The response included a carrier strike group led by the USS Abraham Lincoln and expeditionary strike groups with amphibious vessels like the USS Bonhomme Richard and a combined 10,000 sailors and Marines. By January 19th, the U.S. Navy had 17 ships, 48 helicopters, and 12 fixed-wing aircraft on site. Specialized surveying. Naval oceanographers conducted surveys of changed coastlines and ports to provide essential information for safe navigation and landing areas. Establishing sea bases. The Navy used its ships as mobile hubs for relief operations, demonstrating the effectiveness of sea basing for humanitarian assistance. Additionally, the Navy provided logistical support. The Navy's primary role was delivering critical supplies, including food, water, and medical treatment to affected areas. Air support. Carrier-based helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft airlifted supplies and personnel, enabling delivery to remote areas cut off by the tsunami. Freshwater production cannot be overstated. Several Navy ships were equipped to produce thousands of gallons of potable water every day, a crucial need in the disaster zone. And medical care. U.S. Navy medical personnel provided emergency treatment on the ground, and the ship-based platforms included surgical facilities. Now let's talk about the overall impact of Operation Unified Assistance. First up, improved diplomatic relations. The operation significantly improved U.S. military and diplomatic relations both globally and within Indonesia, a strategic partner. Indonesian public opinion of the United States markedly markedly improved in the year after the tsunami, jumping from 15% approval in 2003 to 38% in 2005, going against the general trend of less favorable global attitudes towards America during that same time period. Established Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief, HADR doctrine. Operation Unified Assistance set a new model for military HADR operations, influencing naval doctrine and training for years to come. International cooperation. It fostered cooperation and increased capabilities among navies worldwide as they learned from the U.S. experience. Significant scale. The operation overall involved over 18,000 U.S. service members and delivered millions of pounds of relief supplies. The precise impact of Operation Unified Assistance is difficult to quantify, but it likely saved hundreds or even thousands of lives and enabled the devastated areas to get a jump start on reconstruction. In political terms, the operation helped improve public perceptions of the United States across Southeast Asia and around the globe. The operation helped change how the Navy viewed maritime security, with far-ranging effects on doctrine, training, and procurement. Humanitarian Assistance Disaster Relief, HADR, became a core competency of the military in the United States. More broadly, successful relief efforts undoubtedly played a role in changing how navies around the world approach their own force structure. The amphibious assault ship, long regarded as a second-class aircraft carrier, became a vehicle for delivering HADR and, consequently, political influence. Here's a few photos of the relief effort. Here is the USNS Mercy TAH-19 underway replenishment with the USNS Tippecanoe TAO-199 during Operation Unified Assistance. Landing Craft Air Cushion LCAC from Bonham Richard delivering supplies to Meulabo, Indonesia. Indonesians in Sumatra, Indonesia unload food, clothing, and relief supplies from the back of a U.S. Navy USN MH-53E Sea Dragon helicopter from the Helicopter Mine Countermeasures Squadron 15 HM-15 Blackhawks Naval Station NS Norfolk, Virginia. Utapoa, Thailand. Airmen from the Air Force Tanker Airlift Control Element carry boxes of relief supplies on January 9th at the Royal Thai Naval Air Station. Island of Sumatra, Indonesia. Victims of the Southeast Asia tsunami unloading supplies delivered by an MH-60S Nighthawk helicopter from Helicopter Combat Support Squadron 5, HC-5. Elements from HC-5 were deployed aboard the Military Sealift Command MSC combat stores ship USNS Concord TAFS-5, providing support to Operation Unified Assistance. Sri Lanka. Airman First Class Emily Starcher helps Sri Lankan relief workers unload vegetables from an HH-60G Pavehawk helicopter during an Operation Unified Assistance mission. She is a flight engineer assigned to the 33rd Rescue Squadron at Kadena Air Base, Japan. Now here's a quick history of the tsunami warnings system. Tsunami warning systems have evolved from earthquake-centric efforts in the mid-20th century to a global tsunami-centric end-to-end framework. The first official tsunami warning system, the Seismic Sea Wave Warning System, was established in the U.S. in 1948, following the 1946 Aleutian tsunami, which killed nearly 200 people, the vast majority of which, 159 people, died in the Hawaiian Islands alone. Then, following the widespread devastation from the 1960 Chilean tsunami, which killed nearly 2,000 people, nations coordinated to establish the Pacific Tsunami Warning System, PTWS, in 1968 under the UN's Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, IOC. But the problem with these early systems, pre-2004, were that they primarily focused on detecting earthquakes and issuing warnings based on their potential to cause tsunamis. That led to large false alarm rates, or FARs, which led to warnings being largely ignored, or worse, for people to go down to the beaches to see what they could see. The 2004 disaster led to enhanced international cooperation and the establishment of regional tsunami information centers, transitioning from earthquake-focused alerts to comprehensive tsunami-focused forecasting and community preparedness. Today, tsunami warning is about three main components: monitoring, forecasting, and community preparedness. Seismic networks monitor for earthquakes large enough to generate a tsunami. DART buoys, which stands for the Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunamis, DART, is a real-time tsunami monitoring system of sensors that detects changes in sea level and transmit data to tsunami warning centers via satellite. Ionospheric monitoring. Emerging technologies like NASA's Guardian analyze atmospheric disturbances caused by tsunamis to provide very early alerts, and advanced numerical forecasting models simulate tsunami movement, arrival times, and potential inundation based on real-time data and regularly updated seafloor maps. And community preparedness. Educational resources are available for different age groups from organizations like the International Oceanographic Commission, IOC, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, the Red Cross, FEMA, and the National Disaster Preparedness Training Center in Hawaii. There are even mobile apps people can download to enhance their preparedness. The focus extends to educating communities on warning procedures and evacuation, often through drills and public outreach programs, recognizing the warning signs and understanding evacuation routes. When detected, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, PTWC, which is part of the Hawaii-based Joint Typhoon Warning Center, JTWC, produces a tsunami threat message which looks like this. It includes earthquake parameters and evaluation. When triggered, the message also includes tsunami threat forecasts, recommended actions, and estimated times of arrival, which are crucial for evacuations. Finally, the message includes potential impacts, tsunami observations as they become available, and a notice indicating when the next update will be released. These messages continue to be issued until the threat has passed. Navy procedures for tsunami warnings for ships and vessels. First, move to deep water. Ships and large vessels, if time allows, are ordered to get underway and move to deep ocean water. Tsunami waves are less noticeable and pose little threat in the open ocean where water depth is sufficient. Minimum recommended safe depth is 30 fathoms or 180 feet. Leave harbors. Vessels in port or harbors are more vulnerable to the powerful currents and rapid water level changes caused by a tsunami. Boaters are advised to leave their boats and move quickly to high ground on land if the shore is reachable before the wave arrives. Stay out of port. Vessels already at sea are advised to stay there and avoid harbors or ports under warning until officials declare the area safe to return, as shore facilities may be damaged and hazardous. It is important to remember that there can often be multiple tsunami waves. Marine broadcasts. The U.S. Coast Guard broadcasts urgent marine information and warnings on Marine VHF Radio Channel 16. The overall procedure emphasizes prompt evacuation from the immediate coastal hazard zone and utilizing the safety of deep water for ships, all while coordinating through official warning systems and accountability measures. On land, educate yourself on evacuation routes and procedures before an event occurs. If a warning is issued, take it seriously. Follow the signs and instructions of emergency personnel and evacuate to higher ground and away from the coast. In conclusion, thank you very much for taking the time to review this case study of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, the deadliest tsunami of all time. Thanks again and have a great rest of your day.